Did you know ghosts are real? It's true. Okay, I just realized that goes against everything I just talked about. Okay, put this aside. That was just my canned opening for the following segment. And here I'm going to talk about real experiences that I have witnessed, that I have heard of, and couldn't disprove in any way over the years, or stuff that has personally happened to myself. And for this, I'm going to get into the subject of running a seance. Now, this was something that I struggled with over the years. I used to have a couple of, actually I currently have one location. Of course, COVID has put that on hold. But I had another location as well that was open to the idea of the ghost hunt. And this is an event that was created a bunch of years back, kind of giving regular folks an amateur experience with ghost investigation. And the one location in Hamilton, where I am from, Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, is known as the Custom House. The original Custom House dating back to the 1850s. Very haunted place. Many different versions of this building has existed, from a custom house to a school to a original YWCA. It was a social services place, which was basically just an abandoned building with an open door for homeless people to come in. It was a macaroni factory. It was a karate dojo, and today it's a museum. So just that quick Coles Notes version of the history, you got to realize how many people have set foot through the door of that building and have had experiences in that location. So for this reason, we are dealing with a very energetic place, and it was wonderful with the ghost hunts. I did them regularly, almost once a month, for 2 years straight. And by the second year, I think maybe the ghosts had accepted us as a part of the building. You could almost guarantee something weird was going to happen every single time we went into that building. And I will tell some more stories about that in the future. There's just way too much to cover in one segment here. But the idea of a ghost hunt for a group of people who are very much, some were experienced, but most were just amateurs in the idea of the paranormal, had to approach this very lightly. And being a spiritual person myself, I approached it from that angle. I'm not a psychic, although I did have psychics who came into the building with me, for many of them. And I found that the method that I ended up with in the end was the most valid, that you could have the most energy stirred up. And that's really what it was all about. If you could stir up the energy in the building, you could then have experiences to occur. So like at the beginning, I would do things a different way. I would bring everybody in the building. I would say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I would introduce them to the tools. I had some tools that people could use, and they could get into groups and become teams as they went through the space. And I would say, okay, go off into the building and do your thing. And at the end of the night, we would get together and run a seance, and then people would give their experiences. And there was one simple change that changed everything, that made it so energetic right from the beginning, and it was that seance. And that's why I'm focusing on it today, is all I did was take the seance and move it to the beginning of the night. I know you're probably thinking, duh, that's so simple. Why didn't you do that? Well, when you're in the moment and you're coming up with these ideas, it sometimes doesn't come to you right away. That's all I'll say. That's my excuse. But I took the seance, moved it to the beginning of the night, and this way my idea was the seance was the catalyst to stir up the energy in the building. And I found that was the major change that was needed, because then things were much more active throughout the building. And I'm talking active in a very assertive and sometimes aggressive way. So that simple change. So the seance itself had a certain method to it. And this is the part I really wanted people to know. So if you ever do run a seance in your own home, you want to stir things up, you want to communicate with an energy in there, find out if your house is haunted, what might be happening, that this process seemed to work for me. And first off, you need to collect any type of communication devices. Recorders, to be able to record what's known as an EVP, which is basically a ghost voice that only the recorder can hear. You also have cameras to be able to take pictures if anything's feeling off in certain parts in the room. This is a good way to confirm that it's not just your mind playing tricks on you, that you can get some evidence behind it. An EMF detector. This is to detect electromagnetic fields in a certain location, something that they say ghosts give off. And a active divination communication device. That's a long statement, but you've heard what they are. I've already mentioned it today. There's pendulums, divining rods, and the dreaded one that I personally love, a Ouija board. Now, they're all divination tools. Pendulum, divining rods are tools that can be used by a single person with their single energy. And the reason why the Ouija board is considered kind of a more dangerous device is because you can have multiple energies acting with this divination tool all at once. So another example of that would be like if anybody's done table tipping. That's another one there, but the Ouija board obviously is much more useful because it has different ways of communicating, like the letters and the numbers, so you can get more detailed with your questions and answers. So you need that tool for communication. You need the tool for detection. That's the first step. And then after that, you got to get everybody on the same mindset and the same energy. Because if everybody's running at the same frequency, which is through their current emotions, that this is what's going to create kind of like one energy. So multiple people, one energy. I'll explain. So if everybody is stressed out in a room, this is like the mob mentality. If everybody's stressed out, angry, and fearful, violent things can happen. Sometimes people who are caught up in these large groups of violent people, they become violent themselves because they get caught up in that shared energy. Because then now everybody is running at the same frequency. Now, if I get a bunch of strangers coming into a ghost hunt, they're all at different frequencies. Some are having a relaxed day. They just watched a movie before coming and they're very happy. Others had a busy day. They just got off of work and their boss yelled at them. Others are anxious about what's going to happen the next day because they got to go to work and their boss is going to yell at them. Everybody's on a different frequency. So the first step in any seance is to get everybody on that same frequency. What I did is I used kind of a meditative practice because it's near and dear to me. Just got everybody to close their eyes and picture going down into a basement. Now, basement, probably not the best analogy here, but for me it felt calming. So going down in the basement, seeing a door, opening the door was basically like opening a door to the other side. And during that time, I would tell people, walk down the steps, visualize, you can see the wall in front of you, walk into a hallway, and I get them out of their talkative brain and all the stresses. I push them towards a visual, which usually in itself is enough to calm them. And at the very beginning, sorry I missed this and I don't mean to backtrack, but so before I do the visualization process, I get people to breathe. So do some slow breaths and get them into more of a calm state. Take them on that little bit of a visual journey. And then once the door is open, I tell them to feel the energy coming from the other side. And that's when I snap them out of the process. And usually this accomplishes getting them all on the same frequency of calm because they've all experienced the same thing. And second, it gets them in the mindset of pulling energy in from the other side. Whether you call it, ghosts and the dead, or just, in general, being able to draw outside energy towards themselves in a haunted building, gets them in the right mindset. So to review there, you want to put people on the exact same frequency that's in the room with you for the seance. That way it's not just separate energies vibrating at their own rate, but that you just come together and all vibrate, and it's like this one massive energy that can pull in ghostly experiences much easier. So I go through that process, and then once it's done, I do attempt a little bit of communication before releasing them into the building, just to show them how it's done. Now for me, I do have a Ouija board in the room, and I have some sensitives and psychics, or just people who kind of mix together on the board, so that when I start asking questions like what's your name and who's haunting here and how many spirits and so on and so forth, that we'll get some movement on the board and some communication to come back. And I've always found that this, in general, doing that meditation first does bring in the energy, and the board is more effective. Now, you don't need a Ouija board to do this if it freaks you out. I understand. It freaks a lot of people out, thanks to horror movies. I'll get into that another time. But you could use a divining rod. A divining rod will swing a certain way for yes and no. So you can get yes and no answers. You can get answers where there's only two, like are you male or female? Do yes and no, and just keep going. It takes longer, but it's still effective. Divining rods I would not recommend. It's not the best of communication tools. Divining rods is more for detection. So if you're walking around a space and they cross, then you've walked into something. So Ouija board or pendulums are good for this process after you do everybody onto the same frequency, and then you try a little bit of communication to get things rolling. And then after that, for me personally, I would then release them in a space to go investigate. Hopefully that's your case, where you can release them into a house, release them into a location, different smaller teams going, and then coming back afterwards to share their results. That seems to be the best process. And then at the end, when you share the results, one person says, oh, in this room, I got a sound of a child saying hello to me. And then somebody else will say, hey, oh, was that the dark room? And you'll be like, yeah. And they'll be like, oh, yeah. I got a sound of little kids saying, hi, mommy, to me. And it was terrifying. And thank you, because your experience now has just proven mine to be real. And I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm going to have nightmares. So that's the beauty of splitting off and coming back together, is that getting these similar experiences from different times and different people. And you now realize, holy crap, I might actually have something real here. So for that reason, the process I just went through here has worked very well for me, and I do recommend it out there if you want to run a seance on your own. Now, I want to give you an experience related to this before we move on to the next segment. And this happened in the custom house. Now, I was down on the first floor. This is when the seance was done at the end of the night. It's still active in the building. It's still possible to get things that occur because it's a truly haunted place. But I didn't expect it to be this aggressive and from such a different part of the building. But I'm in the main gallery on the first floor with about 20 or 30 people. We're doing the seance and the process. And as I'm doing this, what I didn't know is that two of my helpers were up in the attic, and they were using a Ouija board. They were trying to communicate with the caretaker. The caretaker supposedly haunts the attic. And Mary, I've changed her name to protect the innocent, Mary had asked, well, if there's somebody here, please prove it. And this is a question that's asked in so many seances and so many Ouija sessions, and for the most part, nothing happens. So people just use it as a throw-off question. And very rare does something actually happen. And when Mary asked the question, said, if there's somebody here, please prove it, what did they get? But there was a wall to their right, and from the other side of the wall, there was a knocking. Now remember, it is just these two ladies alone in the attic. There is nobody else over there. Everybody else is downstairs with me doing the seance. And Mary, when she heard the knocking, she didn't care about her friend. She was gone. Now, from my point of view, I'm inside the gallery, and what do I hear but this screaming noise that starts out very low, coming down the stairwell. It's very fast. It's like, it's like getting louder and louder. It's so loud as she, in front of 30 people, runs past into the foyer and then straight out the front door. I swear, it was just like a cartoon. And then the door shuts behind her and the screaming stops. So I stopped in the middle of the seance. I'm just looking at everybody, and everybody's staring at me like, what the heck is going on? So I go outside and I talk to Mary for a moment. She's freaked out. She's like breathing heavy, can't catch her breath. And, when she calmed down a little bit, I said, well, can you come inside? Now, thankfully, she's not scared of public speaking, and she was fine with talking in front of the group, because I wanted this experience shared, and I'd rather have it come from the person who experienced it. And she went in front of the group, and just the look on her face, the way she told the story, you just immediately know that something bad had happened to her. And then she told everybody about hearing the knocking on the wall. So we're in the seance on the first floor. This is happening up in the attic. It's almost like you kind of just stir up the energy in a haunted location in general, and that occurs. So, depending on how large your group is, you could take a lesson from this, and you could have people in different locations throughout a haunted place as the seance is going in one room and seeing if it stirs up energy in others, even multiple Ouija boards going at the same time, and the evidence and information that comes through. Who knows? Maybe it will link. Now, I have other stories from the custom house, including one where I dealt with real possession, but that is a longer story and is something I will save for a future podcast.